Good afternoon, and welcome to the Servant Leader Speaks today on the 23rd day of January 2020. We come into a new year. We come into a new week. Well, we're in the middle of the week, but we come into a new time of empowerment and prosperity in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. We've declared that. We've declared we have new vision. We go forward with new insights. We're going to be truthful this year as a nation, and we expect that as we go forward, we can tell the truth as best that we know how. But we get started today. We're going to be talking about Abaco, the aftermath, the reconstruction. We've seen a video circulating, dead bodies in a trailer. We're talking about assistance for the people of Abaco. We are going to discuss why everything is taking so long. Could there be some kind of conspiracy in all of this? Why are the bodies not being identified and why they're not being released? There's a lot of things. There's a lot of interesting things. My team and I have been looking at and been discussing and seeing how we can come to a conclusion about how we move forward to help the people of Abaco. Well, we're going to have a word of prayer as we always do, and we're going to get right into the discussion. I was to have a guest from Abaco on today. They are not available, but we are going to go forward nonetheless with this. I want to thank Dwayne Simmons and Anthony Williamson. They've joined us, several other persons I see online, but we're going to have a very good discussion. If you wish, please go on the thread on the Facebook. You can put in information. I'm looking to the right, at the left, that is where my computer is, and we're going to make sure that we are not only online, but that we are looking at your comments and knowing how we can get done, or even say some of them for you. Now, let's have a word of prayer, and then we're going to get into the discussion and talk about those things that we want to talk about. Father, we thank you for your grace and your mercy for the Bahamian people and for the opportunity to serve them. Father, we pray that the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart would be acceptable in your sight. In the name of Jesus, amen. Well, welcome back. I'm Ali McIntosh, as you know, the servant leader of the Bahamas Constitution Party. I'm a humanitarian, and I am an Abaconian. My great-grandparents were born in Abaco, and so that is the place not only of paternal heritage, but I've been in and out of Abaco for the last 20 or more years, so it is someplace that I care very much about. And so for those of you joining me, if you want to share your comments, you can go ahead and do that. Where I can, I will go ahead and share some of those comments. But starting today, let's talk about what has happened. We're not going to be before you too long today. There's a very busy day today. Many seminars, lectures at the University of Bahamas, and we're planning to be there to talk about, I think, majority rule, and then there's the banking system. So we know that there's a lot of things that we're going to talk about, but we want to talk, and we've said last week, we remember promising the community leader in Abaco, Silbert Mills, that we are going to find an answer for Abaco based on what was coming out in the news. But over the last few months, as you know, we have brought up the subject from the very beginning. We've been part of this process from the very beginning. We called on the 3rd or 4th of September for the government to call for a state of emergency. Of course, they did not follow up on that. They went ahead and did what they had to do. They did not follow through, but it's almost 5 months. And 5 months, there was a lot happening in Abaco, and we believe that some of the things that are happening in Abaco on the part of the government, it is unconscionable and it is inhumane. And we're going to state that up front. Inhumane and unconscionable. And we're saying that because, number one, there was a video, there's at least 2 videos being circulated by Kai Mills, and of course he is a local government representative, so this is credible source regarding a trailer in the yard of the public clinic that contains dead body. Of course, Dwayne Sands attempted to refute some of what he was saying. He did confirm that there may be 51 bodies that are still in the trailer. But the fact of Kai Mills' accusation is that these bodies have been touring and freezing, and it is stink. The scent is almost unbearable. It's unhealthy, and up to 1 mile from the public clinic, that scent is to be smelt. And I'm saying that because I spoke with Kai Mills myself to confirm what he said on the video, and he says up to 1 mile you can actually smell that. And whenever the breeze is blowing and the breeze is going downhill or across that way, that scent is being driven wherever it listed. And so that is a concern. That is a concern. It was not my intent to bring this up at the very beginning of the show, but let's talk about it since we're here. And as I said again, and I'm going to mention the word again, inhumane and unconscionable on the part of this government, if not only what Kai is saying is correct, Kai Mills, but what we have seen, the fact that there are dead bodies that have not been identified and that are still there. They have not been released to family members to be buried, and there is no timeline that the government has given us regarding how they are going to deal with these bodies. Now, this is a very big concern, and give me some latitude as I look through my notes, because I intended to deal with this last, but let's just get right to it. And I wish to thank Pastor Bethel, I see is coming online. I'm inviting anyone who wants to just go ahead and comment if they wish to add something. Because I was intended to have a guest from Abaco, we were going to have quite a bit more information that he would share, but nonetheless, we will share it. So my concern is this. The body is in the trailer. That has not been identified, number one. This is inhumane for the fact that the families, after 5 months, cannot get their dead body. This shows a lack of disrespect for human life and for the dead. I mean, after the hurricane and persons were deceased, the fact that they've not been identified at this late stage in the game, 5 months. I know these things take time, but we're talking 5 months, and persons have not been able to claim their dead and bury them. That is a concern, I believe, not just only in Abaco, but in Grand Bahama. And so this is a concern that the government of the Bahamas, despite everything they've said or they're saying, I am prepared to bring this subject to the fore again, because we did indicate on the 3rd of September about the state of emergency for the point that if there was a state of emergency, certain things would be actionized on that basis. But nonetheless, we have this issue in the Commonwealth, and where the issue of these dead bodies, people cannot come to closure in regards to it. People cannot grieve properly because they're not sure what has happened. And what is the concern too, as I spoke to Mr. Mills, and I think he might have brought it up in the video, is that at the initial stages when these bodies were taken to where they are stored and persons were coming forward to try to identify their family members, they were shunned from doing that, and they was avoided from doing that by law enforcement. That is a very serious concern. And the fact that 5 months later, almost 5 months later, there is no clear path by this government in regards to what they will do. Because if the bodies are in a state of decomposure and they believe they cannot be identified, then isn't there a plan in which we can identify, not identify, but find a way to respectfully bury the dead? That is very important. And I see many suggestions on Facebook regarding how we can do it. Of course, there is a lot of land in Abaco in which we can respectfully bury those persons who cannot be identified, but they can be relayed to rest. I think this is important. This is important for the people of Abaco, the community of Abaco, to have some closure regarding this. So it's not all just about reconstruction. We have a very bigger issue of just just rebuilding houses. We have an issue of dealing with persons who have lost loved ones, people who have died, their bodies still not identified, and not making proper arrangements to have them buried. I think this is important, and we ask that the government move hastily on resolving some of this issue. I believe that if this is resolved, this is going to also help the community to heal. And that takes me to the point of the community. What is happening in the community? Now, of course, we've done our part, and we continue to do our part in regards to how we help the people of Abaco. But what is the concern in regards to how we move forward in the community is, what is the government doing from September 1st and 2nd, when the hurricane hit, in the aftermath? What is the government doing to assist persons to get a shelter over their head? Now, what is interesting is this. There was a report made. There's a report made, and I agree with you, Matthew Allen. No excuse. There is absolutely no excuse to the government. This is a strong, very strong indictment against the government. But as we go on to the point of reconstruction, there was a report very early it might have been in October, where there was said that more than 80% of the buildings that were affected were not insured by whether homeowners or business insurance. So with that in mind, and having the level of damage in Abaco like it was, it means then the government should have stepped forward, even within the first 30 days, to provide building supplies like sheetrocks, plywood, nails, water covering for the roof. Water covering from the roof, I'm forgetting the name of it, but whatever it takes to get your roof back on. Because even if your roof is on, you are able to at least live in a suitable place. But I am told that no building supply has been provided by the government to date. And knowing that 80% of the people that were affected in Abaco and Grand Bahama did not have homeowners insurance, the fact that they would have lost their job, they would have lost the community, so no income to them, yet the government did not provide building supplies. Our guest who was to be on was going to analyze all of that and show us where the government could have done better. And I was saying it from the beginning, 30 days in, containers of building supplies should have been placed on Abaco and Grand Bahama for those persons who did not have homeowners insurance to at least secure their place so that they can have somewhere to live. Now, we're aware that thousands of those persons came to New Providence. Many was housed in shelters, some with family, and they were able but they were displaced, but they were able to live. And now, 5 months later, many of them wanting to go back home, some have gone already, and still have not been able to fix their home. Meanwhile, and I know I'm going fast and I'm going to slow down. Meanwhile, the government has spent $6 million for the domes. I think it's over 250, and none of them are livable as yet. 5 months later, that $6 million could have been spent on building supplies. My proposed guest indicated over 135,000 sheets of plywood would have been able to be bought with that money, in addition to material to repair roofs. But yet the government spent it on domes, which to this date, not one of those domes are occupied. They still have to actually be built and put together and put plumbing fixture in it. And at this point, the government has backtracked, according to the Minister of State for Reconstruction, because the place where they are intended to put it is not the appropriate place. They're still trying to decide whether to give it to the residents, whether they should have put it on the properties of persons, but they have not one clear plan as to how this is to be done. This is inhumane and unconscionable, because many persons still are living in substandard condition. I heard from Silbert Mills, he said people are still living in tents. You could imagine a woman with her children still living in a tent. And as today, the 23rd of January, It is cold. The knots, it's almost 20 knots. In Abaco, it is cold. Grand Bahama, it is cold. And we are looking at a hurricane season approaching in a few months. Yet the government is dragging its feet on how do we deal with helping the indigent or poor people in Abaco and Grand Bahama who cannot repair their homes. And what is also unconscionable when we talk about that, and we saw just before the holiday, persons in Nassau, in Grand Bahama, talking about the fact that they have been trying to get insurance from the Bahamas Mortgage Corporation for their houses. And that was being held up, that they went into the holiday season without their house being fixed. After the mortgage corporation demanded that they do the first phase before they get the first check. What about a caring government that we deal with this a little bit more effectively? And I'm talking about this because the Prime Minister said several days ago that Abaco is 80% online. How is it 80% online if people are still in the condition that they are in? That is unconscionable and inhumane. That's charges that I am putting against this government. In fact, I was watching last night some videos and some documentaries on Abaco. People from all over the world, journalists from all over the world, not only did news stories, but they did documentary. And a lot of what people said during those times is how the failure of this government, that their government had failed them. Because even within the first few days of the hurricane, after the hurricane, I've got many stories. People have died waiting for water, waiting for food. There was fights that had broken out for food and for water. Yet our government was saying, oh, we can't drop water. It might be in contaminated water, but people are dying for water. These are very egregious acts that I believe that has to be laid at the feet of this government in regards to what is being done and how the people of Abaco and Grand Bahama is being treated. The international community, NGOs, private persons, including my family, made an effort, I'm talking about people from overseas, to come to the rescue of these people while our government sat on their hands and did very little. In fact, the charges that are now being levied against the government include its primary NGO responsible for disaster relief, and that is being levied that those action was also not in proper fashion. I'm getting these conversations. People are calling me. People are giving information. We have within our organization a research team that looks for information. You might see my face, but there are a lot of people doing work otherwise to make sure that we get the information that we need. We have to lay blame at the feet of this government. East End Grand Bahama. So we're not leaving out Grand Bahama and just talking about Abaco, but East End Grand Bahama is a ghost town. Many persons is still missing, presumed dead. The buildings are almost all annihilated. And still, the people are saying, well, we need electricity in order to try to rebuild. Meanwhile, the Minister of Finance, the Member of Parliament for that area, Peter Turnquest, says that the electrical company is waiting for the people to get in their homes to turn it on, while the people are saying we need electricity to rebuild. What kind of conflict is that? I mean, that's the Minister of Finance. We've also heard from the Prime Minister who say 80% of Abaco is back online, when Central Abaco is still in a very bad state of disrepair. So we're trying to find out, and I'm asking questions. I'm going to try to ask questions in regards to this. Why is it taking so long? Why is the impropriety being a concern with many people, including international organizations, as to how the relief efforts are going, the reconstruction in these places. We have an international organization who is attempting to assist the government in the reconstruction. We see that. We've heard that. We looked at that. And in that regard, I'm going to talk now about help. Help is coming. We've heard international and private people coming to the rescue of Abaco, and I've got to keep saying that. My people, I'm feeling it. They've indicated sometimes, you're laying in your good bed in Nassau, but we have to sleep with exposed roofs. But we have a bed in Nassau, but we don't sleep. Even in the States, people are not sleeping because their concern is our people in Abaco, in Grand Bahama, how are we going to get out of this? And listen to me, last week we had a conversation. I had a conversation online with several community leaders in Abaco as we were talking back and forth. And their concern was help coming. And that brings to the attention now of the pledge conference that we had several days ago. And what was so interesting is that the Prime Minister was quick to declare that they met the goal with $1.5 billion in pledges. When that was finished, people was quick to come to the point that 975 million of that was a loan pledge. What is a loan pledge? Before I say what I have to say on that, a community leader, I think he's the president of the Clearing Banks Association, Goen Bow, indicated last week in the newspaper is that the government was disingenuous in this regard. They wanted simply to say, and this is my words now, that they have met their goal. Anytime a government goes to the point of simply wanting to say for political brownie points, oh, we've met our goal, this is why these things become disingenuous, as Mr. Bowe said. The 975 million, and I'm getting back to Abaco, so follow me. The community leaders were saying, let's just go ahead and borrow the money. Let's just borrow the money. Why are we going to just borrow the money? I'm going to refer to the CEO of that company, which is Mr. D. Dwan Brown, who is the CEO of P3 Group out of the United States. And he indicated on Beyond the Headlines last week some of the details of what their company is offering the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. I have to say it like that because this is a small company that is offering to lend $975 million, 25 million short of $1 billion to the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. What he indicated in that $975 million loan will not go on the national debt. How is that? Number one, how is $975 million guaranteed by the government or borrowed by the government is not going to go on the national debt? Now, I talk always about the national debt, so that is a concern. So that's number one. His other concern was that part of their loaning of the money would be with both services, material, and work. So that is how they will come to the conclusion of 975 million, of which our government will have to guarantee. What they want to do is they want to use the land in Abaco. They are going to use lease agreements in order to build, and these properties, whatever property that is involved with this, will have to go with their 30-year agreement in terms of payback. And if it is not paid back, or when it's finished being paid back, they will transfer it back. That seemed a very interesting thing. But for persons in Abaco who had built their house probably from scratch or over the years, and who did not have a mortgage and did not have homeowners insurance, to get back in an agreement such as that, they now go back in a 30-year mortgage. If you are 20, 50 something years old, to go back in a 30-year mortgage, where is that going to take you? So let's get to the real point. When this happened, and we promised Mr. Silbert Mills and the people, by extension, the people of Abaco, that we will find a deal, but this isn't it. We decided to do some research. And our research has brought some very interesting things. So you better listen up here. This P3 group is not a big company. In fact, we had some red flags in our research that caused us to look a little further in this regard. In regards to the revenue base of this company, and we looked at it, it is low. Its annual revenue base is a couple of $1 million, not hundreds of millions, not billions. The second red flag, before I put out my total information, is that the CEO of this company in 2004 was first charged with 82 counts of bank and wire fraud. He was convicted of 2, sentenced to 5 years in jail, and had to pay restitution of $1.5 million about that. That was our second red flag. Our third red flag is that the operational manager of this company was just hired in September. So that drove us to do some more research, and my team was able to make some calls in the United States to some very key people concerning some of the project of this company, which after groundbreaking, it took a while to start, and some has not started. But let me get back to the funding of this company. How is this company going to get its money? Where's it getting it from? If it's a company that has a low revenue of barely $1 million, million or two or three, where's it getting $975 million to lend to the Commonwealth of the Bahamas? So this is my evaluation of this. I believe that this company is expecting, when it gets lease agreement with the land in Abaco, it provides that lease agreement in order to get the bonding for the money that they are putting up, Now, where's this money coming from? For us who have been very concerned with funding coming out of China, who owns our tourism industry, who owns, across the board, too many places in Nassau, is this company trying to get lease agreement with the government of the Bahamas for Abaco with money they don't have, which they have to get from a company, I guess, once they get these lease agreements. And then when they do that, what happens when we cannot pay? And based on the record of this government and the former government and the administration before that, we do not pay. We pay the bare minimum, like a credit card, and that's how we've been operating. That's how we get $9 billion of debt. That's how we're approaching $9 billion of debt, because the government of the Bahamas don't pay. So when we put Abaco up for lease in order to borrow $975 million coming from somewhere we don't know, what happens when we cannot pay? And the instance that we have shown in our records, we do not pay. I am saying that just so people could understand. And I appreciate you coming on, Mrs. Wiley, Paul and Maynard. And Paul Maynard is a head of a big union, and he understands how this goes, because we just took BEC and turned it into BPL. The people's asset going to another company. We don't want to get into the business where we have private enterprises being funded by taxpayers' money. But I believe this is the kind of risk we are taking when we are engaging conversations with companies, small little companies like P3 Group. And so the fact, and as I say, we're We are people of wonderful Christian people who give people a chance. We give you a chance. You know, the man went to jail and the man came out of jail, and according to the mayor in Clarksville, I think, Clarksville, Mississippi, will get the place. He actually said when he was being inaugurated, I have to find a job for my friend. And he found a job for his friend. The project is still not come to fruition. And the very questions that we are asking are the questions that the people in Clarksville are asking: who is going to pay this money back? And how is it going to pay back? So these are questions, are valid questions. Valid questions that the Bahamian people are asking. And I believe that the government of the Bahamas, the leadership of this government, which is the Honorable Dr. Hubert Minnis, he says that what people are saying about this pledge loan is silly, confused, and uninformed. Well, we have the information that the due diligence of this government has not been in place, that they are going to try to do business, and I believe that they've done more discussions than they let on in regards to this P3 group. Because why would they just come in and pledge to lend us the money? As of the 31st of August, 2019, P3 group said they had 7 offices. The 31st of August. When you go on their website now, they have 8. The 8th one is in Nassau. I think our next due diligence, and we've done it all out of the country, is who runs the P3 group here in Nassau. That's important. Who runs that group? When we find out who runs that group in Nassau, who runs their office in Nassau, who is their collaborative real estate company in Nassau, then we know where this is going. So we know we can't get them to do much, but we know that in the court of public opinion, people should understand where we're going with this, whether the government should even be entertaining this. And the fact that the government of this country, with all the resources that they have, can't do the level of due diligence to make sure that they don't have to bring these kind of things to the Bahamian people and cause an embarrassment to us. But that's what it is. We do our research. I'm a journalist by profession. That's the major and only training I've had. Well, the first one. Due diligence. The same thing with Oban. $600 million deal for East Grand Bahama. And the company is barely registered in Florida. With one of its principal or one of its directors is someone who lives in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. We're just talking about doing due diligence of a government. We're talking about good governance. It can only happen when you're doing due diligence to make sure that we don't embarrass ourselves in the nation with stuff like this. I'm getting excited. But I have one more point, and then I'm going to resolve this. And the next point is, what about, we're going back to the state of the dead, and the purpose of that is this. As my leadership began to discuss this matter in a meeting last evening, why is it that the persons haven't been identified, haven't been given to their family, and they have not been released? Is there a conspiracy in this regard? I know this is heavy stuff I'm talking about. Because the conspiracy, let's go back to the matter of insurance. The conspiracy that we're just asking question about is this. Why is it taking so long? Why isn't there a timeline issued by this government that's responsible as to when we're going to get this? When people want closure in regards to someone dying, they don't just want to collect insurance because the person died and I just want the money. They want the closure, and sometimes, and based on the situation in Abaco, if your home has been destroyed, if you can collect insurance from the person who was the household provider, you can make closure and you can start a new life. My concern and our discussion is this: is there a conspiracy with the delay of the identification of the bodies and the release of the bodies with insurance? Now we know how the level of economics go in the country and who owns what. Because if a person do not be identified, then there is no payment made. Are we just delaying that so the insurance company don't pay out for the persons who may have had life insurance? These aren't no $30,000 or $40,000. These might be hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars in regards to the payout insurance. That's my last supposition. Let's look closely as to why is the government of the Bahamas delaying both the identification and the release of these bodies to the persons, to the family, so that these matters can be resolved. We only seek justice for the Bahamian people, justice for the people of Abaco, justice for the people of Grand Bahama regarding these issues. When we asked for a state of emergency September 3rd, it was so that all of these things can be actionized in a accelerated motion. We know that would involve also that international agencies would have to be involved with it, but our government may not have wanted that in the first instances. And now 5 months later, we should have done so. Because 5 months later, we're getting every kind of accusation of impropriety based on these matters. How is this money being, how much money have been collected, how much money have been dispersed, and how it has been dispersed. And when we hear that 7 million of the 9 million that has been collected has been dispersed on whatever projects, and the people of Abaco still don't have plywood to fix their roofs, I mean, where did the money go? This is urgent. This is urgent for the people of Abaco and Grand Bahama to have a level of propriety with their government to make certain that they can get the help they need, that if they didn't have homeowners insurance, somebody can give them some plywood. Somebody can make sure there's electricity in East Grand Bahama so the people can begin to rebuild. Somebody can be, so that's what we're talking about. Somebody can be responsible for identifying the dead and giving the family members the bodies so that they can bury their dead, have closure, and grieve. That's why I am passionate today. This is not about politics. This is about the inhumane and unconscionable way that this government has treated its people. This is the charge I lay upon them. It is unconscionable and inhumane. And I believe in the days and the weeks to come, we shall say more. Let me read a few remarks before I get ready to go. Sandy Fanacos says, really good to see that in 2020, Bahamians have advanced to where they are no longer afraid to speak publicly about serious issues in their government. Next step, taking action to protect their national interests in the nation. Well, I've been doing this for 21 years. I'm no longer afraid to speak up because the justice for the Bahamian people is important. Thank you so much, Sandy. Mr. Philip Capron said, many still don't believe the stakes that the Chinese has in this country. The borrower is slave to the lender. That is a concern. I've seen that earlier. People believe because this P3 group have no money, there is no way to verify their money except when they get your lease agreement in Abaco and Grand Bahama, that the money, they got to go to their lenders now to borrow that money to use. It's a third hand. Why do we need to borrow third hand? In fact, in a week or so, we're going to tell you how we can do this without P3 group and how we're going to rebuild Abaco. Or we have to get to a point is that we're doing it for the people and not who is going to gain otherwise. Philip Capron say, you do this, government like to go to bed with crooks without doing proper research and investigation. Wow. Well, of course, we're proving that point. Nonetheless, we just want people to know that this is where we are. This is what we've found. We are only seeking justice. For the person who died, we're seeking justice for their families. We're seeking justice for the community of Central Abaco that has been almost mashed up and annihilated. That the business community in Abaco is mashed up. Everybody is trying to help except this government. This is part of the indictment we are putting at their feet. And over the next few days and weeks, we shall do more, as Sandy is suggesting. Next step, taking action to protect this nation. This is where we must go. We have to do what we have to do. As I wrap up, I just want to say, and I want to repeat, that the Prime Minister has indicated that Abaco is 80% online. I'm not sure as to what perspective he meant. But the fact that the garbage is still in Abaco on the side of the road and houses that have been mashed up is still sitting there. The fact that I think there are garbage still in Grand Bahama, in communities going to where East Grand Bahama. So 80% online couldn't possibly be. Is that a lie, or that is an attempt to deceive? And in closing, I realized this, and I listened to something last night on the TV. The Prime Minister is prepared to do the urgent thing of releasing people who are in jail for possession of marijuana. So they attempt to reform these laws, decriminalize marijuana and the use and the crime related to it. I know we can't be going that far, that we are going to decriminalize the work or any activity associated with marijuana. That is certainly not the way to go. And somebody is saying now fraud can be smashed no matter how long it occurs in a true court of law, which means no matter how long it takes, if you did the crime, you can still pay the time. Nonetheless, the point that as we get ready to wrap up, I was talking about the Prime Minister indicating about the decriminalization of marijuana. For him, that is urgent. Is it more urgent than what is happening in Abaco? That's my final question, Mr. Prime Minister. Is it more urgent for you to ask them to release the people in jail, in prison, for marijuana offenses, small marijuana offenses, but it is not urgent to deal with the bodies in the container on the side of the public clinic in Abaco? Please tell me. It's just a question. Is that more urgent than this? I'm just seeking some justice for my people. Please, Mr. Prime Minister, make that call regarding that trailer in Abaco an urgent call. Just like how you're making a call about the people being released and reform laws to the legislation in regards to marijuana, make that call. And we are going to go and identify those bodies, let the people take their bodies home and bury it, or we are going to bury that. Make that call. Because if that matter of reform to marijuana is more urgent than bodies in containers for 5 months in Abaco, wow. That's all I can say. Wow. It's simply a distraction of the day, or distraction of the play of the day, says Sandy. So as I go, and I'm going to go before I get any more excited than I am, and that is not in a good way excited, but I believe that we must put this before the government of the Bahamas. They lay before them serious charges that they must respond. They must respond. And with this, I'm going to wrap up and let you know that you can keep listening, because we are going to do what we have to do to help the people of Abaco get justice. So we want to thank Kai Mills. I called him already. tell him thank you for what he did, for bringing light to it. He has said that he is it is serious. He has said that the people are just quiet. They just figure it's their life now. You know, the body's in the trailer. Nobody's saying when they're going to move it. We smell it and tell it the scent is finally gone. So we need to ask now the government of Bahamas, Dwayne Sands, the whole government, the cabinet of the Bahamas, to make that call. Let's get this done for the people of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. And Grand Bahama is no less than Abaco, because they had very many destructions in their island also, East and Grand Bahama, totally annihilated. And yet the government still believes we should go on with oil. We should go on with legalizing marijuana when people's lives are at stake, when people can't make closure, people can't grieve. This is important. With that, I rest my case. I'm Ali McIntosh, servant leader of the Bahamas Constitution Party. And I believe in this country. I believe in this Commonwealth. I believe in good governance. And until we get to the point that we're prepared only the commitment to serve the Bahamian people, we will continue with that which we have got. And if we continue to do what we have always done, we will continue to get what we will always have gotten. May God help the people of Abaco and Grand Bahama. It's cold, so some of their houses are still compromised. But we know and we pray that God would be with them in this time. And as I go, may God bless and keep safe the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Good afternoon, everyone.